Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live town hall broadcast coming to you live from China's television studios in Abuja, the nation's political capital. I'm SHOA Kimbaloe, your host for tonight. For the next 2 hours, I will be driving a conversation around the need to have more women go into special seats in elective offices in Nigeria, campaign to amend the constitution to favor more women in active politics or public service. Remember, you deserve a seat at the table. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. Those are the words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Supreme Court judge of the United States. It is critical to have this conversation, everyone. This town hall tagged Special Seats for Women is put together by Elect Her, Giaga Africa, and the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center plaque with support from the European Union. Before we get started, as we have distinguished Nigerians to discuss this matter tonight, let's hear from our partners and sponsors of this town hall.
Welcome to this timely conversation. Despite our abundant human and material resources, as a nation, we are in survival mode, with rising social economic tension across board. Yet, this is expected and will remain our reality until we prioritize equity in our political governance.
At the Manifesto Dialogue 2021, Nigerian women declared a state of emergency on women's political representation. Yes, it is that bad, and the cost of exclusion has become too expensive to ignore, so we need more seats to elect her.
Distinguished guests, I am very pleased to join you for this town hall meeting on women's participation in politics. The ongoing constitutional amendment process with introduction of the reserved seat bill provides a unique opportunity to enhance women's political representation and to empower women in Nigeria in the interest of the society and to the benefit of the country. This event is very timely. It provides a much-needed platform for all key stakeholders to gather and to discuss the concerns and the opportunities to improve public awareness and to reach a common understanding and find a consensus. The European Union is happy and proud to partner and to support the men, the women, and all the key stakeholders in this process in providing a platform for this important conversation to take place.
Welcome to this town hall looking at the issue of reserved seats for women. In Nigeria, it's a major concern that the women who constitute a significant proportion of the national population are severely underrepresented, especially in legislative houses. Less than 5% in the National Assembly and significantly worse in the state houses of assembly. Given the importance of the other gender, given the importance of women, and given the importance that they bring to national discourse, it is sad where we are. We are hoping that this special town hall would enable us to have conversations around the issue, look at what is involved, and look at the special value that women bring to governance in this country. We welcome you all and hope that we do have a great deliberation today. Thank you.
Welcome to this conversation on improving women political representation in Nigeria through the Reserved Seats Bill. Nigeria is one of the countries still experiencing poor representation of women in government. Every election, the numbers are dropping, and we're blessed to talented women performing greatly beyond and in Nigeria. We have an opportunity as a people to introduce gender quotas through additional seats for women in government. We invite you to discuss opportunities for creating seats to elect her. For countries that increase women political representation, they have to introduce gender quotas in their constitution or in their laws. Nigerian women need Nigerians to work together to increase women representation in government through this legislative action. Come, let's have an open conversation and work together to elect women in Nigeria.
What a time we're living in. The world is full of problems. The world desperately needs creative solutions. And women have so many good ideas about what can be done. But women face problems in making their ideas known. Women, let your elected representatives hear your voices in your local council, in your state House of Assembly, and even in the National House of Assembly. Dare to speak up and tell them what you think. And for those women, especially the young women who think that one day they might have the desire to serve in a public office, I say dare to follow your dreams and run with it. But we can't do it alone. We need our men. And so to the men who are listening to my words, I say, when a woman close to you aspires to serve as a leader, encourage her. Show her your support, because Nigeria needs her women.
Heard it, some of the messages from the partners and the sponsors of this town hall. Let's give you some background on this very important conversation. It's all about special seats for women in the Nigerian legislature, a bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to create additional special seats for women in the federal and state legislative houses and for related matters has been proposed, sponsored by Honorable Nkiruka Onyejocha, the Deputy Whip of the House, the Speaker of the House, and several other lawmakers. Let me give you some additional information that will help drive this conversation. First and foremost, I've given you the idea of some of those who are sponsoring this bill. The purpose is to help remedy the low representation of women in legislative houses by providing for the creation of additional separate seats for women. Also, the implications is that there will be an amendment to Section 48 of the Constitution, amendment to Section 49, and amendment to Section 91, which means that there will be 37 additional women senators, 74 additional women representatives in the House, 108 additional women in the state assemblies nationwide, which brings us to the total of 37 Senate plus 74 House of Reps, equal 111 seats in the National Assembly, and 3 per state in the 36 states, making 108. You can do the mathematics and you can see some of the breakdown for you right there on your screen. The status of the bill is that it is before the Senate and the House Committees on Constitution Review. Well, what are the steps that might be required for the passage? It needs adoption of 2/3 majority of members of the House, at least 240 members of the 360 members in the House of Representatives. It also need 2/3 majority in the Senate. At least 73 of the senators out of the 109 need to have their buy-in before this can be passed. The resolution of the Houses of Assembly of not less than 2/3 of all the states, that is at least 24 states out of the 36 states of the Federation, needs to capture these and pass it for it to go then, at the end of the day, the president's assent. So you might be asking, don't we have enough seats in the National Assembly? 109 in the Senate, 360 in the House of Reps. But these are some of the reasons why this bill is important, is to correct historical imbalances, mere resistance to other options, poor ranking. We will see as we go on in the program what this means. The global gender gap, which is enormous. Nigeria is lagging amongst the nations. Even in Africa, you have several other countries that are pushing for special seats for women. So it's not a new thing. It's not something that we're just hearing for the first time. It will be good for Nigeria to domesticate it. So I'll show you a map that shows in yellow some of the countries that are practicing. Nigeria looks to one of those few countries across the African continent, and in fact in the world, who are not considering this kind of situation. And the list is unending as regarding the countries of the world that are considering this. So there you have it on your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with the conversation. I have on the panel tonight very distinguished Nigerians who, in their own right, have the authority of their offices and perhaps their standing in politics in Nigeria and the knowledge of passage of bill and how things stand in Nigeria to make this effective. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the chair of the House Committee on INEC, Honorable Aisha Duku. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And
Good
the
to be
sponsor,
here.
one of the sponsors, the co-sponsor that is, of this very bill, and the Deputy Whip of the House of Representatives, Honorable Nkiruka Onyejocha. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sharon.
And the man who will be speaking on behalf of the Deputy Senate President tonight is Mr. Daniel Bwala, a lawyer, member of the Lincoln's Inn, and an advisor to the Deputy Senate President. Thank you so much, Mr. Bwala, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You might see her face and perhaps think, oh, it's been a long time I saw her face on television or on the floor of the House. Very vocal and very active when she was in the House. Honorable Unena Ukeje, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Honorable.
Thank you, Sharon.
And
It's
good to
always
see
a
you again.
pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I think it's best for us to start this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, but also welcoming members of the audience. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. I appreciate it. The conversation is not just on this part, it's going to be across this room, and we'll be hearing and sharing ideas on just how important this bill needs to be passed. Let's begin the conversation by hearing from the horse's mouth. Honorable Onyejocha, why this bill?
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Electa, and our development partners for having us have this town hall meeting. I think the best way to go is what we are doing now. The thing about this HB 1301 is that it's born out of experience. I came to the parliament in 2007. Our number was not 13. By 2011, we were 27 female lawmakers. By 2015, it went down. And as we speak, like I said, just 13. And what's the problem? Is it that we do not have enabling laws to make sure that women participate, to make sure that we have more women in parliament? Because all the women in parliament, all of us, we are not doing badly. So why we're being dropped? It is because we do not have what we call justice according to law. Every time on the floor of the House, when you bring up women issues, including but not limited to bills, our welfare, the things that we need to have as a nation when you include a woman, knowing that when you put a man and a woman together, they do things and they bring good results. Of course, the Bible says 2 heads are better than 1. And going back to basics, God himself know that the men can't do it alone. And that was why after he created Adam, he said, he brought out one rib and said, let us make this one a helpmeet. Understand? So it's not working. It has not been working. And when we go to conferences, they were like, what are you guys doing? You are not doing what you're supposed to do. It's not about coming to conferences. It's not about signing treaties. It's not about entering into agreement. It's about implementation. You're not walking the talk. And so we try to push for bills. How do we make sure that women representation is effected? And we tried all sorts of bills. We tried gender and equal opportunity bills. It didn't pass through first house, second house, and then up to today. And so we said, we were talking to this, our male colleagues to help us pass this piece of legislation that will include women in representation. And every time they will agree, but when it comes to proper voting, they do some magic and everything will fall.
So you are always overwhelmed.
Oh, yes.
The bill is usually downplayed.
Point of order, constitutional point of order, section 42. There shall be no discrimination against any person. So you have come here. Did anybody give you any special seat? You. And after that, they turned it to, whose seat do you want to take? And at a time, during former leader of the House, Honorable Kogun, the wife organized the female, that's their wives. And we had conversations, and they were agreeing to let's have more women in parliament. And of course, at that time I was chairing the House Committee on Women in Parliament. And one of our mandates was to make sure that the number of women in parliament is increased drastically. One morning, we were supposed to have like conference like this, or town hall meeting, whatever you call it. Then this Madam Akogu called me that the meeting wasn't going to hold. I said, why? He said the women called her the previous day to say, Auntie, please, oh, we won't be able to continue because we thought about these things. If we continue, that means it could affect our husbands. And so we're not going to agree to this again. And that process, everything, of course, collapsed. And it was out of that during Ninth Assembly, of course, you know that Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila is a he for she, is a gender-sensitive speaker. And so I was worried, and I said, something must be done. Since the appropriated seat or the entitled seat, nobody wants to leave. And even the ones we have, these men are ganging up, and they're taking away from us. How do we get out of this quagmire?
All right. Let me bring in Honorable Duku into it. Is it a cultural problem or a political problem? Why does it look like the women's voice are drowning? If you look at the figures, it looks exactly the way I'm describing it tonight. 7th Assembly, it was good. We thought that it was not good enough. 8th Assembly, it became worse. In the 9th Assembly, is the worst that we have seen, at least in the last 15, 20 years in this country, the representation of women. You are very powerful in the House. The seat that you hold, do you feel any sort of intimidation or any drowning? Or what exactly is not allowing this kind of bill to sail through?
Thank you very much, Shem. I want to downplay the issue of culture and say, you know, it is a deliberate manipulation by the men, because they know how to get us to come out and vote for them. If you look at it, the majority of those that, you know, queue up on election days, come rain, come sunshine, the majority that do the clapping, the ashobi, you know, are the women. So we are good at that, and we are politically conscious. So it's a manipulation that we should not occupy any seat, because that so-called seat is meant for a man. But we are good at going to vote for the men, and then so we should stop there. We should not, you know, upgrade to being those on the seat. And when you come out to say there are women issues, that only women should be allowed to sit on the table, decision table, and, you know, decide, they will tell you, are they not doing enough? You know, while they are not actually. Well, this is Nigeria, and it belongs to all of us. We want to make it in such a way that keep those your seats now. Let us try, because we have to think out of the box. Let us keep those seats and then bring out other seats. At least Nigeria is a member of the global village, let me say it that way. So we cannot sit here and a country is having 68%, you know, of women in leadership and in political and appointing position, 50%, even in Africa, you know, the list is, I can go on and on. While the giant of Africa, Nigeria, is having less than 1%, you know, in the national and the states. You can imagine a whole zone having almost 0% female representation. And it's in this 21st century.
So if we see women in politics in Nigeria, and people like you in public office, in fact, who could say, who are lucky to get elected, and who get so powerful like yourself in the House, well, we should be clapping for you, because is it very tough for you? Is the terrain very tough?
More than 10 times the
More
man.
than a man.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
How tough is it for you?
Wow, you can just, it's better imagined. Very, very tough.
Let me bring Honorable KJ. I know you're not the type that backs down easily. You're a tough woman in your own right. Whatever you believe in, you say. Is the case different in your from the part of the country you come from? If Honorable Duku is saying this, does it apply to where you come from too?
Well, I think, Shem, thank you very much. But I think a good place to come in is to say that in the Southeast, Abia State is the only state that doesn't have a female House of Assembly member. So it is a complete testosterone fest in our House of Assembly. And so, you know, I think that it's difficult for women everywhere in the world, everywhere in Africa, but more so in Nigeria. We have to work twice as hard to be thought of as half as good. Now, coupled with the fact that our political space is fraught with so much violence, the kind of violence that you see in the Nigerian political space, you probably don't see it in other places. Other places, there's cultural, there's socio, there's political, there's economic things that stop the women. And there's also age-long stereotypes that stop the women. But in the Nigerian political space, of course, there's also institutional. The parties give us tokens, okay? So you don't buy the forms, but everything else is stacked up against you, okay? But over and beyond that, there's also the violence in the Nigerian political space. So when you pass the hurdles of all the institutional, cultural, economic, psychological hurdles you have to cross, you also have to deal with the violence on election day. So yes, indeed, I think it cuts across. In certain places, more conservative societies, probably, you know, they probably have to scale those hurdles. But I can tell you that women face the same hurdles across the country. And that's the reason why all of us share the same amount of passion when it comes to conversations such as this. Because we may say that for them culturally it's a problem, but for all of us, we have to work twice as hard to be thought of as half as good.
So I'm going to come to Mr. Buala because it does look like women are being drowned in politics, but tonight you seem to, you might be drowned. Intentionally, I sandwiched you in between the very powerful women on this platform. But Honorable, getting a space in a male-dominated arena is one thing. Having a voice is another thing, because for a moment they think that you do not even belong. Now, having to speak up and say your mind and have your say, how tough has that been for you when you were in the House?
I mean, it was tough, but I tell you what it is, and I always say this, that because the women in the House and in the political spaces are committed. In the words of Madeleine Albright, she said, now that I found my voice, I'm never going to be silent. And I know that that works for all of us in the House. Because, you know, we work twice as hard, we make our points, we constantly stand, and we realize that we're drowned by the sheer numbers. And so we scream, we do whatever we have to do, we negotiate. And so it starts out being tough, but I tell you what it is, that because most of the women on the floor are so competent and we put our minds to doing everything that we can, we earn the respect of the men before the year runs out. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we earn the respect of the men. And so we find our voices and we hold our own. So the only point, and I must glean from what Honorable Nkiruka said, is that when it comes to the bills, just because of the sheer numbers, we're unable to do much. But as for whether we walk the walk, whether we fight, whether we push, whether we try, whether we coax, cajole, argue, quarrel, sometimes cry, we try all of that. But, you know, when it comes to the point of numbers, we just are totally outnumbered. And I think that's why this bill that Honorable Nkiruka is proposing is just absolutely important, because I hope it gives us the sunshine laws we require to get at least the numbers so that our voices can carry our dreams.
I do agree with those who debate that politics is science, but I do say that if you do not know mathematics, you perhaps may not have a place, especially when you have you are in active politics. So like you said, the numbers really matter when you're pushing this kind of thing. But I'm surprised that women are always having their ways in a lot of things that I know. When I was in secondary school, even in the university, women will battle it out with you when it comes into the log of the scores. And when you go to the board, you see women first, second, third. And when it gets to getting the job, sometimes women don't get it. And so you wonder what exactly is happening. It's a man's world, that's what they say. But it's a terrible mentality, isn't it?
It's actually a woman's world. And I have mixed...
That's the first one. Isn't that the first time I'm hearing that?
I will explain. You know that the role, but not in a negative anyway, the role that women play in not just our lives personally, but even when you come to organization and then the nation, there are roles that you cannot deny. and their influence are immeasurable. So I give you instances. Let me start from where she stopped when she talked about voice. So if you don't have a voice in the National Assembly, you know where to leverage on to put a pressure on them by community organizing. So what we are doing tonight is part of the process of generating a conversation in the hope of putting pressure on them to do that. And I'll give you instances. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, when she decided to run in the Bronx in New York, she was a bartender, did not have any structure. But she began by community organizing. And in doing so, she was able to generate about $100,000 or $300,000 up against a congressman that had about $1.6 million and was going for the 11th time. She defeated him hands down by community organizing. So in the National Assembly, take for instance, because of sheer number, in limitation in terms of numbers, the women are talking, but no one is listening. You can leverage on the constituency where these men come from. As you begin to put pressure, the people put pressure back to them. It's a magnetic force. But there is a global, in my view, there is a global hypocrisy, which is the reason why we have, in one part of the world, you will see progress. In another part of the world, you will see retrogression. So I give you instance. The first 10 most powerful countries of the world, they advocate for inclusiveness and inclusion of women, but they don't demonstrate that in their government. In the United States of America, until 2018, for the first time in the State of the Union address of Donald Trump, there was a bipartisan support. Why? Because they had the highest number of women congressmen that came to the Congress. Constituting about 23 or so percent, which is a little point something below the global standard, but it was a massive improvement. You would have thought that America should champion the cause. If you come to Europe, Latin America is leading in legislating women reserved seats. Can you imagine India, 28 years down the line, the legislation is still suffering? The Senate, if you have to compare that with ours, like in their Senate, they approve it, the House is not. In Nigeria, the House overwhelmingly are supporting it. The Senate, they are looking at it this way. Now, you come back to Europe. Do you know that the Europeans favor more of one appointing position? So if you go to most part of Europe, you have 50-50 in terms of appointment in the cabinet. But even then, the women complain that the cabinet position given to them are what they call low issues cabinet. They are not things that matter. The same Europe favor an arrangement where political parties will adopt this structure of giving their members tickets so that when they come out to election, they will win and then come into governance. Now, because they have led in many aspects of life, we would have thought that if they put pressure in this regard and demonstrate it in their country, Africa will pick up. Can you imagine? Rwanda is the one leading the world. In the whole of Africa, you have Rwanda and South Africa. And Africa and Latin America are up against the rest of the world on this matter.
All right. I mean, if you look at it, in this country, we have a precedent of women doing fantastic stuff. Yeah, exactly. It does look like we're comfortable. We sit very tight, and we're confident about the women handling our economy. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala did a fantastic job. Ms. Ahmed is doing her own bit in this cabinet, although you have less women in the cabinet. But the question is that how much of that inclusiveness can you have? Not just saddling them with responsibility, but giving a lot of responsibility. We'll take a break. But when we come back, you're representing the DSP. The question is that we don't just want this to be a talk show. Yeah. We want this to be for real. We want this to sail through. And how will that happen? We want to get a voice whether or not the DSP, as the chairman of the Constitution Amendment process, will make sure and give Nigerians a commitment that they need tonight to hear that women will have a place that they deserve in our politics and public service. We take a break, everyone. And when we return, we get to hear from my very distinguished audience members, and we get responses also from the panelists. We'll be back in a moment. Join us again. Welcome back, everyone. This town hall is Start Special Seats for Women. It's put together by Electa, Jaga Africa, and the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC, and with support from the European Union. Tonight, our conversation is giving women their rightful place. If they can vote, then they should be able to be in those offices too, isn't it? There are two genders that are recognized by our law, as far as the Nigerian law is concerned, the male and the female. It does look like one will go out to vote, but one overwhelms the space. Why that? A woman who is wanting to change that narrative alongside our colleagues. This effort has been long coming. Honorable Nkiruka Onyejocha is one of the panelists tonight. He's the co-sponsor of that bill on the panel tonight. And also Honorable Aisha Duku is the chair of the INEC committee in the House. And Mr. Daniel Boala is a representative of the Deputy Senate President who is unable to make it tonight, but is speaking on his behalf. He's a member of the Lincoln's Inn and a lawyer. And Honorable Inena Ukeje, a former member of the House of Representatives, plus my audience member. Thank you so much, gentlemen and ladies, for coming tonight. I want to get a commitment before I get those responses.
Right.
Did the Deputy Senate President tell you that there is a commitment that there is a possibility or potential for this bill to sail through?
It's not just about him saying it. I'm privileged to be, as a consultant, member of the consultants, employed by the National Assembly to help assist in research and advisory on the Constitution review. And we have had several hours. I can tell you that this particular bill has not been dropped. As a matter of fact, in our last meeting, it came up in the Senate, and because of one or two, not dissenting view, but opinions that we have to look at it holistically, because of if you create the seat, of course, there are certain things that are involved. You have to also look at the logistics and all that. So they decided that in the next and final meeting, we're going to bring it up. But since you mentioned the Deputy Senate President, let me tell you how far he has gone. And for the records, he is 110% in support of this bill. As a matter of fact, he has way ahead, before Honorable N.O. introduced this bill to the House of Representatives. He has introduced a bill for alteration of the Constitution to bring about 35% for women inclusion in positions of government. When this bill came, he became excited about it. In fact, way before this time, he has introduced sexual harassment bill, which has now become like a locus classicus, because that is where the self-esteem of the woman is cultivated
and protected.
Yes, a woman whose self-esteem is destroyed in the university or in any tertiary institution will not have the courage to come to the National Assembly and push. So he introduced that, and now we have the issue of locus parentis, which takes away the idea of consent. So once a girl is under the care of a lecturer, it doesn't matter if she has consented or not. It doesn't matter if she's above 18 or not. Once you harass her sexually, it becomes a criminal offense. So that is to suggest his support of the women advocacy for inclusiveness. And for the record, I want to say it again, on this bill, he's in support of it. You ask, can he give a commitment? He has thus far brought it to the point where, like I told you in our last meeting, it was raised and discussed, and is still part of the Constitution review that will be taken forth to the Nigerians.
Because what is important, Mr. Boala, is that there are a lot of policies and laws everywhere in the country, but it does look like people do not observe or respect those laws. The 35% affirmation, I don't know, affirmative action, I'm not sure if those are respected in any part of this country.
So that's the issue. Between when a law is proposed to when it is passed, there is what is called advocacy, which is why we're here. You see, because of the cultural issue that is raised, in Nigeria, some parts culturally, they are affected. Some parts culturally, they are more enlightened than that. But even if you go to the north, culturally, women are not bound. They run for post. But in terms of advocacy, you see, power is not given. You have to take it. These distinguished women you see here, nobody came to the house and dashed them all. That's the truth of the matter.
Especially for those who have been there for several years.
In fact, when she mentioned Abia as not having a member of the house, this is Abia who is championing this cause globally. And I know in London, where this bill she proposed was raised as an issue, they didn't know people in Nigeria could take the boldness to do that. So we need to escalate that by generating advocacy.
Because Honorable Duku said something that over and over again, we see the voices of women being drowned and silenced when they speak. So the question is that there are men that are chairing these committees for the constitutional amendment. So when you speak it tonight for the Deputy Senate President, internet does not sleep. When you say these things, we are holding you to it, Mr. Boala. I know you have a name to protect, and you give us a commitment tonight that we should go to bed. This will leave. That will hold you on to it.
My wife to run for office, so that tells you.
All right, let me get responses from the members. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very happy about this bill on additional seat. And I think what we are discussing is a very serious business. And it's not just about something they give us, it's about a right. It's a legal right. There is also moral obligation to do so. And Nigeria is also bound by international and regional treaties that they are state parties to. For example, you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stated clearly that everyone has a right to participate in the government of their country. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the same thing, right to vote and be voted in election. The protocol to the African Charter on Rights of Women in Africa specifically asks for inclusion of women politically and recognize affirmative action, just like the CEDAW that we're all aware of. If you look, Nigeria is a laggard. Nigeria is lagging behind. After the 2019 general election, the result is decimal. And if urgent action is not taken, then you know we've lost to 2023. It will further decline. And I haven't seen such retrogression in any history, except where a country has faced war, some kind of natural disaster, for you to see where the whole world, international community, is in favor of gender equality and women's empowerment. And all of a sudden, you look at World Economic Forum is ranking Nigeria 146 out of 153. You look at the global average, 22.45%. The regional, African regional average with regard to political representation of women is 23.4%. And within West Africa, 15%. And where is Nigeria? 6.7%. Where the power is, women are far away from it in Nigeria. And this is not because we trivialize this sometimes, as if to say it's not our right. We have the numerical strength, and we have the capacity to raise the quality of leadership. And we've demonstrated that. Right. And you can see that from the women. So I think now that is over to the women. We are demanding, as a matter of right, that we be included, that we participate in governance, and that the representation of women. I think she deserves a round of applause. And, and that's the way to go about it. And this additional seat is not asking you to forgo, because it will have been more difficult if you go and say 3 senators per senatorial per state, please give 1 to a woman. They will refuse. They will say, whose seat? Are you going to cast a dice? Who will go first? How do you delineate the constituency? But it's saying additional Senate seats. So it will be statutory. Additional House. So let me get yet another opinion in the room. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Lovely interventions there. Let me get yet another opinion from the room.
Thank you very much.
Please, could you introduce yourself? Sir?
Yes, I'm a Berry Fender and the president of Women in Politics Forum. Taking it from where my learned colleague stopped, and from Honorable Boala here, he talked about advocacy. We've had series of advocacy to the parliament. We've talked to the Senate, Deputy Senate President. I agree he's an ally, but we need him to do more. There has to be a strong commitment. We've taken it to the House of Representatives with the Speaker. He gave his commitment quite all right. But it's not just about commitment. If I take it back, when President Muhammadu Buhari was contesting an election, he made so much commitments to women. Talked to us about how he was going to have an inclusive government. He even went as far as speaking about women's integrity and why women should be supported. But what happened afterwards? So you see, for me, this special seat bill, it's a bill that's actually helping Nigerian men, in a way that they will have to recognize our efforts, our strength. And if this bill is passed, it will help the political system. But again, like Prof said, we are no longer talking about begging. I always, say this, and I'm very certain that we have taken this advocacy to the grassroots. Nigerian women are more informed now. And we requested that at any point this bill is coming up, it must be televised live. And everyone will have to vote on it individually. Because we need to know the men that are for us. And the men that... Everybody should see what is happening. Exactly. And then after that, there will be a payback time. If they didn't vote for us, we'll meet them at the polling booth. That one is very certain.
Thank you so much. Yes. Let me come to the floor. And look, I'm looking at the steps needed for the passage, because that is a big deal, isn't it? Because the devil is in the details. And the details is how these numbers will work. Let me begin with Honorable Duku. What is your biggest fear in terms of the passage? Because you need the 2/3 in the House, 2/3 in the Senate. You also need 2/3, 24 states in the Houses of Assemblies.
Yeah. Well, my biggest fear is not even in the state assemblies. It's with my own colleagues.
In the House?
At the House and at the Senate. Because if I wish Senator Olijimi were here with us to talk about what she faced during the Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill, you know, it is so sad that when issues like this are brought, even while they are not even sitting in the chamber, one person will go out and start calling, Senator Olijimi is here on the floor. Please come back, and let's kill the bill. It's so sad, honestly.
That's what happens on the floor.
Yes. And you know, as if we are foreigners or we are not there, the same sisters, daughters, wives, you know. We are not talking about even ourselves. We are talking about Nigeria and the future of Nigeria. So my biggest fear is the National Assembly.
Your colleagues?
Yes, our colleagues. Number one.
But Honorable, let me put, you are a leader in the APC. Yes. I mean, you spent several years in that party. Is there anything you can do in your party to make these, to rein this down on some of your leaders?
Of course, yes. And we have already started. We have the woman leader, Okotete, who has led us in the amendment of the party constitution. We have done our best, and even with our leader here, Barrister Ebere, we have done our best to make sure that even in the political, you know, party leadership, the structure is changed. Because if you remember in the 2019 general election, during the primaries, there were a lot of women who contested. And what will happen? You know, to our disappointment, during the election, we saw that many of the women were just kicked out, you know, deliberately by the political parties. So, number one is my colleagues. Second is the political parties. Since we do not have the independent candidature yet, the next issue is the political parties. They need to be, you know, carried on board.
Because Honorable Winana's party here, it was a tussle because I had women on my show who literally said the only space that is left to a woman is a statutory position, women leader.
Even that women leader is not even assured. In some states, there are men that are women leaders.
Isn't that funny?
And campaigning, even campaigning that, look,
even somebody is campaigning now.
Someone right now is campaigning
for woman leader.
For the position of a woman
A man
leader.
Campaigning for the position.
Yes.
Honorable.
So is it that there are men that do not know that there is you know, a creation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called a woman, when in the Holy Quran it is innal muslimina wal muslimat wal mu'minina wal mu'min. God created a woman and mentioned it in the Holy Quran, and yet you are coming out to say you are contesting for the position of a woman leader, and some sensible people are there watching you, you know, and accepting it as a norm.
Honorable Onyejecha, what is your biggest fear? I know you've seen a lot. Are you working with other people, governors' wives? In fact, the First Lady, are you speaking with people like that to make sure that this has a weight that it requires? It's a long rope to stretch and a long road to walk in making sure that this is passed.
Yes, before I say that, I have to tell you that this bill, like I said, it was out of experience of what we've gone through over these years. And Speaker is co-sponsoring this bill. All the female members are co-sponsors, and more than 100 men are co-sponsoring. The 85 that is being quoted was the first day that we assured them that, listen, it is not going to affect the seat you have. 360, remove it aside. This one is additional. It's okay, no problem. That's how they signed to it. And so they agreed.
So you have 100 and
something, about 120.
That are behind this bill?
Yes.
So, and this is the very first time we're seeing this kind of signal or this kind of backing.
For the first time.
For the first time.
And this is first time a presiding
Well done. I think
officer.
you deserve a round of applause too. Because that, I mean, learning from the past is giving you a leverage to move forward, especially when you have the speaker behind you.
Yes, and this is first time a presiding officer is co-sponsoring a bill on women inclusion, other presiding officers, sorry to say it here, once somebody raised constitutional point of order, he upheld it, and that's it. But this one, he said, I am signing into it. And immediately, Speaker signed, they said, people started signing into it, and especially our northern brothers. So apart from that, before we brought this bill on the floor of the House, because we know what it means for a bill to pass through first reading, and they will be waiting for the day of second reading. You don't need to even finish. Once you say, second reading now? Yes, they will say constitutional point of order. So we moved a step further to amend the section 42 of the Constitution to say, except on issue of gender. You understand? So we removed that barrier. There shall be no discrimination. We said we must discriminate on the issue of gender. So that one now, after this one, nobody will come and say constitutional point of order. That's the
so there is hope. Yes, because you need 240 in the House. Yes, for the women. Already have 100 plus.
Yes, and I still counting.
Still counting.
Those people are co-sponsors. Many people want to join, but of course.
You're a leader in the APC.
Yes.
So you should be able to pull your weight too.
And that was why we met with our Attorney General of the Federation before we even slated this bill. We spoke to a lot of people before we brought it to the floor because we didn't want this bill to have a steel bat.
All right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten to this. And then for the women, you're talking about governor's wife. We are working with the wife of Governor Fayemi. She's doing all her best to make sure that other state governors' wives are keen to it, and a lot of people.
All right.
And of course, I will not fail to mention our indefatigable Pauline Tallinn.
Okay, the Minister of
Women Affairs. She's pulled through executive, and every member of the executive, at least maybe 60%, are in all fours with this bill because she's done a lot. So
let me bring in Honorable Inena here. I will always discriminate against Mr. Daniel Boala in the order of recognition because
it's a positive discrimination.
Let me hear from you. Interestingly, we have Honorable Duku and Honorable Onyejocha of the APC. The PDP, how far with your party?
We are waiting for him to cross. For her to cross.
Do you have that in mind?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have the mind? They said they're waiting for you on the other side to cross.
Well, politics is very dynamic. But let me also say that that leadership is about consistency.
Yeah.
And we'll see. You were saying.
So you take that home, Honorable Duku.
Yes.
Your preaching might be working. So
no, you missed the part where I said leadership is about consistency.
So you're going to be consistent.
I think you missed that part.
Interesting.
Don't worry, we know how to go about it.
We know what to do.
Let's share in your experience. How do you think this can work?
You know, I think that for the first time, as Honorable Nkiruka pointed out, we have so many gender champions. And I think that is an amazing thing that we've seen. Now, they speak to experience. But let me say that, you know, with the presiding officer, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, as one of the sponsors of this bill, is going to give it the fillip that it requires. And so, you know, you can't blame the men, quite frankly, if they're being territorial. That's all they know to be. But I think that what we're doing as well, and I think
some of us don't.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. But you know, I think what we're doing as well, by advocacy, having this conversation, throwing up the concerns of the men, saying to them, and I know that with this bill, you know, a lot of the concerns are going to be the size of government, the cost of governance, and so on and so forth. And I think that if we can walk through those conversations today and actually talk about them, talk about the merits, the pros and the cons, the cost and the balances of having more women in parliament, the SDGs, the common sense conversations about it, the inclusiveness of government. I think that, and we continue to tell the story in a way that, you know, identifies the concerns, speaks to the concerns, and creates some measure of calm within those who think that their seats may be on the line, that I think that it is something that we can do. Now, what do I think? As Honorable Aisha Duku said, our colleagues we have concerns about them because, you know, I think that unless, and this is where civil society needs to come in as well, because civil society needs to tell the stories in a way that removes any opaqueness to the way that it is going to work, where there's real clarity. And of course, it will also behove on the political drivers to have the political will to drive it. But I think civil society must do a bit more advocacy. We must look at the numbers. We must look at the fact that, for instance, women are front, right, and center when it comes to conflict resolution. When you have women at the table, conflict resolution starts, it sustains. And then we look at how much we've spent, for instance, on insecurity in Nigeria, what more women in parliament can do, the cost benefits, 1% of the budget is only what we're asking for. I think those numbers have to go out, that if we have those additional numbers, it will only affect the budget by 1% as against the 8 trillion naira that has been spent on insecurity and so on and so forth. I think those are the kind of numbers that we have to throw so that the rest of Nigeria realizes that we're not expanding the size of government to make it unwieldy, but we're bringing it together in a way that there's sustainability, there's inclusiveness, and maybe hopefully we can meet the SDGs for 2030.
I just love listening to you. I could forget myself and not pass it on to another person. We need to close this because we're moving yet into another technical area of this whole conversation. We're looking at how it's going to play out on the floor, but there are another conversation about the advocacy and the other part. But I wanted to close this section for us, Mr. Bwala, the hopes and the aspiration of this bill and what needs to be done. Is there anything that has been left out?
Yes, but this is in my personal capacity and not that of the Deputy President of the Senate. You know, political parties are the primary fulcrum where the discrimination starts. If a woman secures presidential ticket in Nigeria, a woman will become president. If she can secure a ticket from her political party, but it is skewed at that level. So my suggestion would be that if this bill, if it has not already taken care of it, if they can amend it to also provide that political party shall observe the provision of XYZ in their primary and election process, so that whether they like it or not, at primaries or Congress and primaries, they must ensure that a woman emerges for the position of Senate. So once she gets to the final election, there's nothing anybody can do. A woman must win in all the political parties. But if it is not reflected in political parties' constitution, then that means a particular political party that is pushing for that will favor it, and then you will not see it endure. So political parties, in my view, are the foundation. That is where either they are skewed or they are promoted. It is that we have had a speaker in this country.
We're out of time, but I see that Honorable Duku and even Honorable Inena, they're nodding in the negative.
No. This particular bill does not need this primary that they will screw. The bill is seeking that for each election, it has to be contested by women alone.
Okay.
That's it. So Party A, PC, Party PDP, YPP, ABGA, or any party will bring in a woman.
Special.
For that seat. Honorable Duku, you're on the same plate, right?
Yes.
All right.
So about 36109, we must push that the parties should ensure that at least let there be at least 2 women in a state for these 306 also, because the competent women are that's thrown away during primary. And besides, after primary, any person that the party brings wins election. Why don't you ask yourself a question? Why will even people who are not competent, once they make the primary, they win the election?
We're due for a break. What a conversation that we have tonight. I don't know, I could enjoy talking about women in politics as much as I'm enjoying it tonight, but there is another dimension to it. But I must sincerely thank the panelists tonight because we're going to have some new fresh faces after the break. Thanks so much, Honorable Duku. It's good to see you tonight. Honorable Onyegacha, thank you so much. Mr. Bwala, thank you so much. Honorable Inena, it's a pleasure having you. I do stay, not so fast. We take a break, and when we come back, the conversation continues. We look at the other side of this conversation. How do we move this forward? Stay with us. We'll be right back.